And this is First Coast Connect. Today, how a promise made 17 years ago led a First Coast News anchorman to help a stranger with leukemia. Later in the program, with the discovery of baby bull sharks in the St. Johns, tells us about how the species is faring and why that might not be good news for the river. But first, you will know my guest as the longtime evening anchor at First Coast News Channel 12 and the host of the consumer advocacy segment, Ask Anthony. But recently, someone came to ask Anthony for something a little different. Let's take a listen to how he first told viewers about it back in May.
In tonight's Ask Anthony, I'm sharing something personal. This time, I'm not just reporting a story, I'm living it. It started with a simple cheek swab, and now it might end with saving a life. Last Monday, I had several vials of blood drawn for further testing. The reason, my blood stem cells might be able to save the life of a man with leukemia. This is a process that started 17 years ago.
Anthony Austin, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me today, Ann.
So this was 17 years ago, as you said, back
17 years ago, 2008.
2008, and you were just a little baby reporter
22 years old.
in Texas.
Yep.
So tell us about how you got involved on this path.
So this all started, like I mentioned, in 2008. I was a fresh reporter right out of college, working in my hometown of Tyler, Texas, at the CBS affiliate there. I was the weekend anchor, also the weekend reporter, also the weekend producer, also the weekend editor, because if you know anything about TV, when you start at a small market, you do it all. So it was my job to go out and gather stories on the weekend and then also anchor the news that night. And so, of course, we're always looking for things that are happening in the community. And we have been contacted about a young girl. Her name was Emma Ruth, and she had a rare blood disorder. It was called Fanconi anemia, and it's a rare genetic disorder that affects the bone marrow. And her family wanted to get her story out there because they were looking for a bone marrow donor. And so one weekend, one Saturday, I went and covered the story. They were having a bone marrow drive. And so, of course, as reporters, we want to try to tell the story the best way that we can. So knowing that this little girl needed a bone marrow donor, I wanted to encourage as many people as possible to sign up to become a donor. So I became a donor myself. I showed people with a simple cheek swab. That's all it took. You could become a donor. And so I swabbed my cheek for the story. My information was put into the registry. And I kind of thought at the time, okay, I'm going to do this. They're never going to call me, though. What are the chances? And for several years, I never heard anything until back in April. I got a phone call right before our 5 p.m. newscast, literally a minute before the newscast, saying, hey, you're a match.
Wow. And I mean, we've all covered stories that have a particular emotional impact on us. Was this that kind of story, or was this sort of just an offhand decision that you kind of made in the process of presenting the newscast?
I would say it was an emotional connection because I felt for this family. I felt for this little girl, these parents. I think Emma, at the time, I want to say she was probably only 2 or 3 years old when all of this was going on. And I'm just thinking about these parents who they're looking at their child thinking, how long is she going to be with us? How much time does she have left? And to hear their pleas for someone to please step up and hopefully be a match for their daughter, to be a bone marrow donor, to help, extend her life, her time with them here on earth. I had that connection. I was like, if they're going through this, I know other people are going through it as well. And what can I do to help? Because that's always been my goal in life. I originally wanted to become a doctor, but that didn't go so well. But I've always wanted to do a job where I could help people. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's what I do with Ask Anthony. So I've always, since the beginning of my career, I've wanted to do something where I was making a difference in someone else's life.
So you get this call right before the newscast, and I'm guessing it caught you a little off guard because it had been
did.
a minute.
I thought it was a spam call at first because I haven't heard from these people in 17 years. And I'm, after that point, I'm thinking they probably don't even have my information anymore. I'm like, why? I was like, this can't be real. This has to be a scammer. And then after I got the phone call, they left a voicemail. Then I got a text message. And in that text message, it had all of my information. And I was like, I don't think this is a scam because they know a little bit too much about the process and, what I did 17 years ago when I signed up. But just looking at that text message saying, "You're a match. We think you can help save a life." I turned to my co-anchor Heather and I said, "Look at this." Like I was like, they're asking. They want me to call them immediately about helping this man with leukemia.
Did you have to think about it a little bit?
You know, a little bit, but I was more curious than anything. I wanted to know how the process worked because I'll tell you, when I signed up 17 years ago, a lot of people, and I want to talk a little bit about this too. There's a big misconception that becoming a bone marrow donor or actually doing the donation process, that it's painful.
Mhm.
That's a big misconception. And so I had that in the back of my head. I thought I was going to have to go under anesthesia. I thought they were going to take a giant needle and just jab it into my side, into the bone to get the bone marrow. And I was going to be out for several weeks.
I
You
mean,
know,
that's how it used to be,
that's how it
right?
used to be.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I had that in the back of my mind. And I was like, oh, I don't know about this. But I called them after our 6 o'clock newscast that night, and I spoke to them about it. And they told me about another process called PBSC, and that stands for peripheral blood stem cell collection. And they said it's basically like giving plasma. Like you're going to be hooked up to a machine for 4 to 6 hours, and we're going to take the stem cells out of your bloodstream. And they said you'll be back to work the next day if you want to go back to work the next day. They said it's not. They said that's a big misconception that you would have to do that. They said that medical technology has advanced to where we can do that now and still help save someone's life. Now that happens, I think, 90% of the time, but there's still a 10% chance that you might have to do it the other way, where you would have to, where it becomes more of a procedure surgery, where you would have to go under anesthesia and do it. And they told me that's usually when you're donating to a child. I donated to a 36-year-old man
And
with leukemia.
that's all you know about him right now?
That's all I know. So for 1 year, they won't give me a lot of information about him. I'm hoping to meet him one day, but after a year, they're going to decide. Well, I should say this. After 1 year, he can decide if he wants to give me his personal information. And I've already said I want to give him mine because I would like to meet him. And I think they do that more for privacy and just for recovery reasons. They don't make any contact. They don't allow you to make any contact with the patient that you're donating to. But all I know is he's a 36-year-old man with leukemia, and he lives in the United States.
And so you're saying that, most cases, I was surprised it was 90% of cases like this, of donations, they can be done in that less invasive way. But I would guess that makes the process of finding donors easier. And it is necessary because I think in your reporting, you say that only 25% of patients who need this kind of marrow transplant have a match within their own family.
Right. So normally, if you're ever in a situation like this where you might need a bone marrow donor, if you need someone's stem cells, normally your brother or sister, your siblings, they would be the best match for you. But that's not always the case. So let me look at my statistics here, because I did write down that number. So yeah, every year about 18,000 people in the U.S. are hoping for some life-saving stem cell or bone marrow transplant, but only about 30% of patients, as we were just talking about, actually find a match within their family. So that's why it's important for strangers to get into this registry, because if your brother or sister, if that doesn't work out, well, you need help from somewhere.
Right.
And the help is always not right around the corner. So the gentleman I donated my stem cells to, he's here in the United States, but some people, they're donating to someone in Australia, China, somewhere across the globe. So that just kind of tells you about the importance.
If you're just joining us, we're talking to First Coast News anchor Anthony Austin about his recent experience donating to the National Marrow Donor Program. If you've got questions or comments, you can join our conversation by giving us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on Facebook, Instagram, or X at FCC On Air. So, Anthony, finding a match is a process. And I know that when you talked to the woman who helped coordinate your care,
Right.
she explained that it can be challenging. And she told you that your particular genetic match was pretty rare.
Yes.
And in some ways that has to do, I mean, we talk a lot even on this program about, race is kind of a social construct, but
Mhm.
ethnicity is a thing, and
Right.
people's genetic background when it comes to matching something like this does matter. And so having a diverse donor base is important.
Very important. I'm so glad that you're bringing this up because I really wanted to talk about this, because it really put things into perspective for me. So you asked me, how long did it take for me to think about it to decide? Well, I had a lengthy conversation with my donor specialist, and I asked her, I said, "What if I decide I don't want to do this?" And she said, "Well," she said, "I see that you're black." She says, chances are the man you're donating to, he's black as well. And this, when you're matched with someone, it all has to do with genetics and uh, other issues as well. And here's the reality of the situation. Um, when it comes to the donor registry, uh, patients of color, it's really hard for them. So listen to these numbers. According to the National Marrow Donor Program, black patients have just a 29% chance of actually finding a match, a 29% chance of survival. Now, compare that with white patients who have a 79% chance because there's more, people of um, a Caucasian background within the registry.
Hmm.
But when it comes to Black or African American people in the registry, the numbers are not that high. So if you're a person of color, and this is whether it be Black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever it may be, those are all different ethnicities that are not represented in this registry right now, you're
Hmm.
going to have a hard time finding a match. Now, I know from personal experience as a black man myself, there's a lot of, just because of the way things have been over time in history, a lot of concern about medical testing and, experimentation within the black culture.
Mistrust.
Mistrust, exactly. And so it's been hard for donors of color to come forward and participate in this program. And so that's one mission that I have right now, is to encourage people from different backgrounds to actually join this registry to help save a life, because there's a lot of people out there who need your help.
We've got a question from Sue on the west side. Good morning, Sue. Go ahead.
Good morning. I was just wondering, thinking about a show like Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates Jr.
Hmm.
The fact that somebody is a match, does that maybe open up an opportunity to find family somewhere else in the world that you matched with?
Yeah, it's interesting question. Is there any connection to ancestry as far as you know?
Sue, that is a great question. That's something that's been in the back of my mind about this. What if this person is related to me
Hmm,
some way?
that would be fascinating.
It is. I mean, there's a big possibility that that could be the case. You never know.
So you understood when it became clear to you that people of color are underrepresented
Mhm.
in this registry, that this person who is in need of this match, if you didn't donate, could be in a particularly difficult
Right.
situation. It's not easy to find a match even within that universe of people of color within the registry. And
Right.
so um, I would guess that created in your mind a greater sense of urgency.
It did. It did. Because I asked them, with this process, how long do I have? Is this something I need to do immediately? And they said, your patient is in fair condition right now, but that can change. And even when they call me this week, and I guess I can go ahead and tell you the good news, since my donation, I did receive a call this week that he has been transplanted with my stem cells and he is doing better. But they told me that this was something that we needed to move, not immediately, but we need to take care of it as soon as possible.
Sure. And so one thing that I thought was fascinating that you mentioned because you did regular Facebook posts
Right,
kind
right.
of
Hmm.
updating us on the process. And I want you to talk a little bit about the process. But one thing that you learned is that the patient actually inherits your blood type
Yes.
and your
Yes,
allergies.
yes. Thank you for mentioning that. So this was really interesting to me. I had to go through an extensive health questionnaire. I got asked a lot, a lot of questions about my background and my history. So, for example, with me, I can tell you that I'm allergic to ibuprofen, sulfa products. I can't mow grass, which I'm thankful to have that allergy because I'm really allergic to grass. So the man who I donated to, he's going to take on those same allergies. He's
Wow.
going to have my blood type and my allergies.
That's bananas.
Yeah.
So you had to go, as you said, this is a lengthy examination process,
Mhm.
a health assessment, but you also had to get some injections over a
Yes.
period.
Mhm.
Can you kind of describe, was that difficult? Was it painful? How intrusive was it?
Yes. So 5 days before the actual donation process. Also, let me just kind of walk you through a little bit about what I had to do because I want people to understand kind of if you're thinking about this, what's required after you become a match. So first, I had to go have several vials of blood drawn, and we're talking like 10 plus
Mm.
vials of blood drawn. Thankfully, I'm not scared of needles. So that was done about 2 or 3 times, and they're just basically checking your blood for different diseases, infectious diseases, just kind of taking an overall look at your health. So I had that done. That all came back. Then I had to go for an actual physical, which is kind of your standard physical, just to make sure that um, everything's okay. And then they had to do a vein assessment, and that's where they look at my arms to see, my to basically look at the mapping of my veins to see if I would be good for a donor because you're hooked up to a machine for several hours and the blood is flowing back and forth. So I had that done. But after all that came back clear, then it's time for the actual donation. So 5 days before, I had to take what's called filgrastim injections. And so I actually had a home health nurse. You can either do it yourself or have a home health nurse come and do it. Well, I want a nurse to come do it. So a nurse came to my house every day, checked my vitals, and did this injection. And I always want to make sure, I want to look at my notes here about the filgrastim injection, see if I wrote that down to kind of explain exactly uh, what they do. But basically, it kind of, when you get these injections, it increases your stem cells
Hmm.
within your blood, and that makes it easier for collection. And so when you take these injections, you do develop bone pain. That's something I dealt with. I had back pain, hip pain. You have fatigue. You have headaches, possibly. Um, but I told myself a temporary discomfort was worth saving a life. And it kind of just felt like I had the flu at the time, but it's just basically your body working in overtime to get these stem cells, these platelets produced so that you're able to have a good collection on Monday or on the day you donate.
Yeah.
And it worked out well for me because they said I was a super producer and I was spinning them out just like that. So the process took a little bit shorter for me.
Oh, that's
But
great.
that is something to mention that you have to do. And I had 3 injections a day for 5 days.
Wow.
They gave me 2 in the arm and usually 1 in the leg. They also do the abdomen. And it didn't hurt that much. So I just want to, if anyone's thinking about becoming a donor, it wasn't that painful, but you do have a little discomfort. But once the donation happened, I was fine after
And
that.
and you had good veins and you
Yes.
were releasing a lot of these stem cells.
Mhm.
So how long did the actual collection process take?
So normally it lasts about 4 to 6 hours. I was done in probably less than 4 hours just because I produced so many, which they said was a good thing for my patient. It just really depends. Sometimes, especially women, it could take about 2 days.
Mm.
But that's kind of rare. But it's normally 4 to 6 hours for the average person. And you go to different facilities. So I went to Boca Raton. I know Houston is a popular spot to go. Seattle, Washington D.C. But the people down in Boca, it was like a vacation.
Mm.
And the National Marrow Donor Program, they pay for everything. They put me up in a nice hotel on the beach. I had a car service. They ordered lunch for me during the whole process.
Wow.
So they really roll out the red carpet for you.
I saw that even in some cases, I guess they can cover, if you are losing wages from being absent from
Yes,
work or
yes.
child care coverage, if
Mhm.
you need to,
Right,
help
yep.
with that. So they really do try to make sure that it's at least expense free,
Yeah.
even though it isn't, entirely a burden free process.
Exactly. They'll pay for a companion to come for you. They'll pay for flights, food, you name it. I put my dog in boarding and they paid for that. So, I mean, they try to do whatever they can to make sure that you can do this.
So, I mean, what's your upshot? What's your takeaway here from this process that began so long ago? You feeling pretty good about having done it?
I am. And a big question that I've received, would you do this again? And I said, without a doubt, I would. Knowing that just a moment of my time can save someone else's life, can extend someone else's life with their family, with their friends, with their loved ones, how can I say no to that? A temporary discomfort for me for a lifetime for someone else. I would do it in a heartbeat. And right now, I'm actually going to remain a donor for this gentleman for the next year. And because there is a possibility that I might have to make another donation.
Wow.
Um, I wouldn't have to do the Phil Graston shots again, but I would have to go through the process. And without a doubt, without a doubt, I
Hmm.
would do it.
Well, Anthony Austin, I guess is a good ask of Anthony in
Yeah,
this case.
exactly. The ultimate ask, Anthony.
That's right. He came through. Well, Anthony Austin, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sharing your story and thanks for doing it.
Anytime, anytime. I encourage everyone. You can always reach out to me. I'm going to talk more about it on the news tonight at 6 p.m. about my journey and show some video of the process. But feel free to email me at askanthony@firstcoastnews.com if you have any questions about becoming a bone marrow donor.
All right. It's Anthony Austin. Thanks for being here. Up next, a program pushing within-trification over gentrification celebrates an important home ownership milestone. Welcome back. With a new leader at the helm, an Eastside coalition continues its effort to revitalize a historic neighborhood from within, focusing on community and avoiding displacement. Here to tell us about it is LIFT JAX president and CEO, Travis Williams. Welcome back, Travis.
Again, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're also joined by Ivy Henderson. She is a Project Boots homeowner and a resident of the East Side and also a landscape architect. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
So last week, LIFT JAX announced the completion of its first single-family home completed in support of Project Boots. And we should probably start by just sort of explaining what Project Boots is, Travis. It's a home ownership program that you have worked in partnership with LIFT JAX, which is not to be confused with LIFT JAX.
Sometimes it is.
Yeah, sometimes it is. And I've seen you describe it as a way to kind of invite East Side natives back into the neighborhood.
Yeah, and then I also say Ivy's also our director of housing and real estate for LIFT JAX as well. So she's one of our team members. But yeah, in the model that we work in collective impact, you have amazing ideas that come to pass. And one of those ideas early on was by Dr. Pedro Cohen, the director of LISC. And his vision was, how can we get workforce individuals, folks who've moved away, who kind of got out, back into the urban core. And it really melded well with our mixed income philosophy within our framework at a neighborhood base of how do you bring a mix of incomes to create the most vibrant neighborhoods. And so in the collective impact model, you gather around good ideas and you try to make them happen with your partners. And so we were one of the early investors in that program, providing down payment assistance, funding for the participants, which Ivy was one of the first participants before she joined our team. And then over time, we just evolved, and that's part of the role we play in our model around community quarterback is how do we just be nimble and agile to make good ideas happen? And so that evolved from down payment assistance funding to site control for some of the first homes. That's a fancy term for making sure you have the land before you build something. site control for some of the first participants who wanted a home in the neighborhood. And then again, in our evolution of being a developer and an investor in the East Side, we've become one of the main developers for folks who graduate out of their 10-month program with LISC, but they still want a home to move into. And so, as a part of our evolution, we've now become one of the main development partners for making sure those folks actually have a home to move into. And we're proud to have, Dante being the first person that moved into a home that we as an organization fully developed internally.
Actually built, right? And Ivy, as Travis said, you were involved in Project Boost before you became employed by LIFT JAX. You recently signed your name to an editorial. It actually ran yesterday in Jacksonville Today, talking about the neighborhood out east and framing kind of what it means to people who love that neighborhood, who are from that neighborhood. I thought it was an interesting phrase. Y'all described it as a sacred place. Can you kind of explain that to me? Because I don't think that that's language a lot of people typically use to describe their neighborhood.
Yeah. So I have grown up in Jacksonville, born and raised, and started kind of getting involved with the historic East Side around 2017, 2018, during my time at the University of Florida taking landscape architecture. And so my family's from the neighborhood as well. Unfortunately, my mom, migrated around the 60s over to Sherwood, and then we grew up in the Harts Road, Dunn Avenue area. And so during my time at the university, it was just understanding, of course, what landscape architecture is and how we can help different communities, and whether it be environmental or physically for people, the built environment and things like that. And so I started getting involved with the historic East Side after a couple of things happened, and fell in love with the neighborhood. I remember visiting there when I was a kid, but had a perception as a younger person, and then in my mid-adulthood, kind of become more involved in understanding of like the significance of this place and how sacred it really is, and who has come out of this neighborhood and helped so many people on many different levels from a national standpoint. And so decided to get my feet in and said, okay, I want to become a part of this. When I graduate, I was going to plan to always move into the East Side, and the opportunity did present itself in 2021 when Project Boost came about. So it was a great opportunity, and just happy that I was already involved with the work and already building those relationships and understanding the significance of the neighborhood at the time. So it was great.
And Travis, you're also a fourth generation out east sider, I guess we call you. There are challenges that the East Side faces, and we can talk about those, but it also has in place something that a lot of new communities are chasing, which is, it's got this mix of residential, it's got a very established commercial area that's very walkable, that's very appealing. It's got longtime businesses that are really dug in there, and I think who've stayed when they could have left, residents who stayed when they could have left, and so there is this kind of weave to the neighborhood that's very intimate. It's very approachable. It's very accommodating for people in a neighborhood community way.
Yeah, it's interesting how history has a lot of the things we're searching for. We have to look back
Mhm.
to find what we really want. And so when you look at neighborhoods like the East Side, they are a lot of what people want. This idea of a 15-minute community, a walking community. That's what most communities were pre the economic flight and white flight that happened in many areas where people moved out, and we became a sprawling suburb city. And so those bones are in neighborhoods like the East Side. And one of the fun facts, and it is truly a sacred place, the East Side is the largest intact historic African American community in the entire state of Florida on the National Register.
Hmm.
And so there aren't many places that have maintained, that have fended off things like displacement and gentrification and those terms that you hear. But it does have a lot of those bones of what things look for and what we normally don't see in our American experience, which is people with deep generational ties living in the same place. I'm not a unicorn. If you drove through the neighborhood, you'll see a lot of folks who are fourth generation. I have younger cousins who are now sixth generation living in the neighborhood. And that's the beauty of neighborhoods. And that's why we believe this work of neighborhood transformation is so important, because it does give a glimpse of what we can be as a community. And people are looking for that. And we're seeing a migration back to the urban core that I believe neighborhoods like the East Side are a part of.
It is a time of enormous transition for the East Side, and not only because some of those desirable characteristics make it vulnerable to gentrification, but also because this stadium of the future is about to be built right adjacent to the east side. And there is this huge element of that that includes investment for the east side, that's going to be funded in part by the city and in part by the Jaguars, but that's going to bring an enormous amount of revenue. And so you really are on the precipice of a lot of change. Do you feel like the east side is kind of prepared to absorb all that's coming?
I think it is. I think we're getting there. I think we definitely have a good team and a good ecosystem of people and organizations that are coming together for the betterment of the neighborhood. And so I think we're heading in the right direction of being ready for what's to come. I think there's been a lot of preparation in previous years with the local CDC, Historic Eastside CDC, that's been getting things in place. So I think that, like we mentioned to a lot of people, things don't happen overnight. And so we're headed in a good direction where I think we're going to be able to get the neighborhood prepared for a lot of the things to come.
And so Project Boots, one of the things it does, one of the things it did for Ivy and has done for other people that are participants is it offers some assistance financially, but also some required kind of training. What does that element look like?
It's a good question, and that may be a good opportunity to have Dr. Pedro back on to talk about that element more. But I would say there's a programmatic piece to it where they take folks through a multi-month program. But I think from our standpoint as an organization, the value add is people who are committed to showing up to be good neighbors.
Mhm.
And when you talk about things like vulnerability in the neighborhood, home ownership rates are one of the main things to pay attention to in neighborhoods that are vulnerable. As they decrease, neighborhoods become more vulnerable because if it's largely single family and those homes are owned by investors who have rental, then you could kind of change rental rates overnight. But when homes or neighborhoods are high with homeowners, it makes it much more difficult to have it be vulnerable to massive changes. And so the fact that this program allows for people to be ready to work with a developer like us to say, hey, I'm ready and approved and I want to be here. It's just a great pathway for us to bring more folks into the neighborhood. And, folks like Ivy and others aren't showing up to say, hey, we're saving the neighborhood. They're showing up saying, hey, this is a beautiful place
Mhm.
with beautiful people. I believe I can add value. And again, in a mixed income philosophy, we need the best of the best. And income doesn't mean you're better necessarily. And so that's what it provides for us is those folks who are interested, along with others who may not necessarily want to go through a program and they say, hey, I want to move in tomorrow. And we're ready to work with those folks to build for them as well with some of the other homes that we're building right now.
You're not exclusively focused on homeownership, though, we should say. I mean, you have been involved in helping to redevelop some rental properties, including Boylan Flats and Townsend.
Hmm.
And these are, apartment complexes that were previously underoccupied and considered in some cases either unsafe or unsanitary. And you've been able to be involved in helping them get under new management. And now they're really doing they're much better in terms of occupancy as well.
Yeah. So in that mixed income component of our work, the idea is whatever your income status is, you should live with dignity and quality. Whether you live in a multifamily that may be HUD or lower income options, whether you stay in a home that is for a lower income individual, or whether you can afford market rate, there should be a level of quality and dignity. So the work with apartment complexes was important for us because that was an important node in the neighborhood. Secretary Fudge came to Jacksonville a few years ago to visit these exact. Previous secretary of the of HUD came to visit those complexes, and so we knew that if we wanted to see transformation, then these kind of big boulders had to be addressed. And so for us, a part of it was addressing, quite frankly, a slumlord who did not treat tenants well. And part of the solution was, hey, we've got to get better property management in here. And so we partnered with a larger developer to purchase those. And we're proud that we went from a 25 score on the REACT, which is not to get too technical, but that's the score that a HUD property gets for its quality. One of those sites had a 6 out of 100 with people living there, and the other
Wow.
had a 25. And so, what do you do with that? How do you address that? And it's not just a program. Part of it is a JSO officer shared with me years ago that the other part of crime is property management in many cases. And when you deal with property management, when it's quality and respectful, crime tends to go away. And so that was part of it. And we're glad that we just got a preliminary score, and one of them has a 90. And so in about 18 months, we've been able to, with our partners, go from a 25 to a 90. But we still got a lot of work ahead of us
Yeah.
on other things that you've got to continue to improve.
Ivy, as a program participant, I mean, what would you tell people that are interested, either maybe they used to live on the east side or they're interested in finding out more? Would you encourage them to participate in the program themselves?
Yes, I would if it's something that they absolutely it provides a level of education and knowledge about the neighborhood. So if someone is not from the neighborhood necessarily and want to, be a part of it and be a good neighbor, I think definitely going through the program to receive that, level of education. But also, of course, with the down payment assistance, it is a help for those who may need it. But like Travis stated earlier, we are building houses for individuals who may not need it as well. And so I think one should definitely look at their situation and say, if this is this something that I do need, but I would recommend it as well.
And it's been a welcoming neighborhood to move into.
It is, it is. It has been great. We actually put in a pool in our backyard, and we're kind of like the neighborhood pool, but it's been great so far.
It'll be a great draw. Well, congratulations on the new home.
Thank you.
Travis, congrats on the new leadership role that you've got at LIFT JAX. It's nice to have you back on the program.
Just glad to be back and look forward to seeing you next time, man.
All right. All right. Take it easy. We'll be back in just a minute. We're going to be talking about an aggressive ocean predator that's thriving in the St. Johns River. We're going to talk to local researchers about what it means for river recreation, fishermen, and the health of the river itself. Welcome back. A recent catch in the St. Johns River may tell us about changes that are happening on a global scale. Here to discuss their recent discovery and its implications, we're joined by Dr. Brian Franks, Associate Professor of Biology at Jacksonville University. Good morning, Dr. Franks.
Good morning, Ann.
We're also joined by Vinny Migliori, Jr.
Good morning.
Good morning. He's a marine science graduate student at Jacksonville University. Thanks for being here, Vinny.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. So, Dr. Franks, bull sharks aren't exactly a new finding in the St. Johns River. What makes this recent catch significant in your mind?
Yeah, for sure. So, we had heard about bull sharks being caught in the St. Johns. We've seen photos of catches in the St. Johns. So we knew they were here. But the big question is, in what numbers, where in the river they're located, how are they using the river? So we decided to design a scientific study to systematically sample the river in some locations where we knew there had been reports of them in the past, to see if we could catch them, and then, put some tags on them, and then do it over a period of time where we can get an assessment of the seasonality of their use in the river. Are they here all the time or only in particular years? Are they using it as a nursery area as well? So we decided to scientifically try to study this population. And this catch is important because it's really the first one of that study.
And so this catch was near the Buckman, and it was a baby shark. It was had some signs that it might have been a fairly recent birth. And I mean, what's the significance of finding a shark at a very young age that far upriver? What does that tell you?
Yeah, so first off, bull sharks are a species that give birth to live young. So when the mother gives birth, they come out alive. So they're gestating in the mother for a period of time. And they're also a species that the the scientific term is placental viviparity, which basically means the pups are born with a little umbilicus attached. That umbilicus breaks off and leaves a little small wound that closes over a relatively short period of time. So if you catch one of these little sharks and you see that that wound is either still open or has recently closed, you know that that animal was likely born within the past couple of months. And that's significant because that tells you that this animal was likely born. They don't really travel, at least that species, too far once they're born. So it's likely that that shark was born somewhere in the river.
And folks who are watching our live stream right now can see some of the pictures. We were just a minute ago watching Vinny holding this shark, and you could kind of see that umbilical scar. So you caught a baby shark with a belly button. First of all, what did it mean to you when you caught that? What did it tell you?
It told us that there are bull sharks in the St. John's. I was ecstatic when we pulled in. We saw it in our long line. The team and I were, like I said, I don't think the boat was quiet for the next 5 or 10 minutes. It was very exciting, and to see that umbilical scar on the individual was just lovely. It was just incredible.
Yeah. And so you obviously took some pictures. You've got some additional work to do, though. I mean, you bought this, you found this on June 9th. You want to do some additional sampling. How often are you able to get out on the river?
Absolutely. So we get out to 3 different locations in the St. John's 3 times a month, and we're consistently sampling each month. Those same sites and looking for these bull sharks.
All right. And so I guess big picture, this is a species that is adaptive. It can tolerate warmer water. It can tolerate higher salinity levels or lower salinity levels. It's a fairly flexible creature. So what does it tell you about the river conditions?
Yeah, and I mean, I know bull sharks have been utilizing the river for a period of time. And the big question that we have is how many are using it? But the fact that they are still using it shows you that at least the river is still sustaining that population. And I think it's very important to note that these bull sharks do have a unique physiology where they can move, at least once they get a little bit older, they can move between salt water, pure 35 parts per thousand salinity, all the way down to pure fresh water. Now, they do prefer for their nursery areas to be more in that brackish water, which is likely why we see them in the river and fairly far upriver as well. I believe the salinity when Vinny and his team made that capture was single digits, around 5 parts per thousand. But it shows us that at least the river is still sustaining this population.
We're talking right now about sharks in the St. Johns River. We are going to have to take a short break. We'll be back with more on the bull shark discovery in just 2 minutes.
Don't Miss a Beat presents The Lion King Jr., the conclusion of their 6-week Broadway Experience summer program. Performances will be held at the Ritz Theater July 24th and 26th. Information at don'tmissabeat.org. Museum of Science and History's new exhibition, Mosh Archives, The Story of Us and You, steps you into a treasure trove of memories, now through August 31st. Tickets and information at themosh.org.
Mortality rates, mental health diseases, obesity, chronic disease rates, all up significantly. We're not talking about American adults, we're talking about American children.
And the portrait it's painting is a crisis in children's health, an urgent need to address the decline in children's health.
Why American kids are so unhealthy and how American politics only makes it worse. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11 on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Fresh Air,
The Trump administration has been pressuring elite universities like Harvard and Columbia with widespread demands and threats of federal funding cuts. So why are they now investigating George Mason University? Education reporter Catherine Mangan tells us why GMU's president thinks it's driven by a backlash to DEI efforts. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
We all learn about the three branches of government in school: the judicial, the legislative, and the executive. But there's an unofficial fourth branch that many consider the backbone of our democratic republic: the free press. In 2025, it's under threat. We listen to a discussion from our recent trip to the Aspen Ideas Festival about the health of the fourth estate. Next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, if you're just joining us, I've been talking to Dr. Brian Franks. He's a biology professor at Jacksonville University and marine science graduate student Vinny Migliori. He was one of the researchers that made a recent discovery of a baby bull shark in the St. Johns River. Vinny, why did you choose this research project in the first place?
Well, coming down to Jacksonville, I've always wanted to work with sharks. I was always fascinated at a young age, and getting the chance to work with Dr. Franks and hearing about the recent reports from fishermen about bull sharks being caught in the St. Johns River was just perfect. And the fact that we were able to start studying them and seeing them in the river was just, kind of what led me to do it. But it was a lot of the anecdotic evidence and the fishing reports that led me this way.
Yeah. And Dr. Franks, sharks are often considered kind of an indicator species of ocean health. And very often when we have a robust population of sharks, we consider that ocean ecosystem as stable or doing well. But that may not be necessarily the same kind of indicator when you find a bull shark in the St. Johns River. That might tell us something about the river's health that maybe isn't good news. Can you kind of explain what it might tell us about either warming waters or increasing salinity levels in the river?
Yeah, so bull sharks actually are a fairly warm water species, subtropical to tropical species. So I do think Florida is kind of a natural habitat for them. And as I mentioned, they prefer, at least for their nursery areas, this brackish water. So if we do see, saltwater intrusion into the estuaries, we may actually see these bull sharks move further upriver to try to find some more of that freshwater mix. But ultimately, if the river is sustaining a population, even though it might be a small one, it does show that at least parts of the river are remaining healthy enough to sustain the population for the foreseeable future. There has been other research in other areas that seem to show bull shark nurseries are maybe shifting north at higher latitudes, and that may be due to some warming waters. So particularly in North Carolina, one of my colleagues did a study where there had not been bull shark nurseries in these areas of North Carolina, where now there are. And it may suggest a shift of the population north, which we are seeing in a lot of marine life as oceans warm.
And so, I know that the Gulf has also seen a increase in the presence of bull sharks, also because of, temperature and salinity. And so bull sharks seem to be a species that in a warming planet actually are, in some ways perhaps benefiting from those changes. And so their numbers could increase. We could see, them thriving in that environment. But I would guess that there's also a point at which if they're doing well, that they could, deplete the fish population or perhaps, encounter, problems in other ways that would harm the species. Can you kind of forecast what those possibilities might look like?
I mean, for the St. John's that I've been studying, I don't think it's going to be a huge issue based on, again, we were talking a little bit before about, not seeing them in huge numbers, but for, as the nursery's moving up further coast into the South Carolinas, it could be an issue, but I believe that more studies should be done first before any answers or any, before we can come up with stuff like that.
What about the fact that they're just considered they're intensive predators, Fishermen don't always love them because they have a tendency to snatch, fish off the line. But there's also people who are concerned just about encounters with sharks. And bull sharks are known to be more aggressive.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it is important to make note that sharks, if you see one, it's actually reflective of a healthy ecosystem. Sharks are a natural part of our ecosystems, and we've actually done a pretty good job of protecting these species. So I think it is important to note that when you see one, it's actually reflective that your water body may be healthy as opposed to depleted. But yes, I understand shark depredation, which is, fishermen and women getting their catches taken by sharks, is something that we seem to be seeing a little bit more of. But I think that's because we have healthier shark populations. And I think it's this idea of shifting baselines where, 100 years ago, that was very common. I lived in the Bahamas where there was a lot of tuna and marlin fishing. And if you look at those old photos, every fish was taken by sharks. It's natural, I guess.
Well, Dr. Brian Franks and Vinny Migliori, thanks so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Man.
Thank you.
All right. That's our program. Thanks for listening. And just a note as we close out today's show, WJCT is in the midst of a membership drive that is truly without precedent. Following the loss of all state and federal funding, this station is now entirely dependent on our local community for support. If you care about the news, the voices, and the perspectives that you hear on this program, please consider becoming a sustaining member of WJCT. If you're already a sustainer and you're able to, please consider increasing that monthly donation. You can call 904-353-5928, or you can go to wjct.org/sustain. And thank you so much. Thank you for your support. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Volunteers in Medicine Jacksonville is dedicated to helping the working uninsured stay on top of their health. High blood pressure is a silent killer. A healthy reading is under 120/80. Learn more at vimjax.org. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com.
Discover new and classic music every Saturday night starting at 8 with Mr. Al Pete as we stroll through the neighborhood. And then stay tuned for Bop City, Electro Lounge, and Blues Horizon, only on WJCT News 89.9 Saturday nights.
This is WJCT